Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with part 6 of Fundamental Laws, a report of the 68th Convocation of the Rose+croix Order. Our Code of Ethics, foundation for a Code of Ethics for home and school. Teacher and parent. The worst possible waste of time and money, said Emerson, is to spend them off the line of your career. There can be no greater work than God's work of molding souls for a better life here and a life of immortality hereafter. And there can be no better opportunity for undertaking that work than that found in teaching and parenthood. While to slight this all-important work or to turn aside from it when once trained for it or having entered parenthood is to write failure across your life's fair page. To lose your own life lesson. Teaching and parenthood may not be confined to merely the schoolroom or family, for the true worker applies the trade learned to all children wherever encountered. Reverence for the child. A child is a soul enrolled in God's school of life. The dull, defective, or criminal and immoral, born under unfortunate conditions, fighting blindly upward toward a far gleam of light, hampered by poverty, squalor, and unfortunate environment, are as precious in his sight as daintily cared for darling of welcome birth and refined surroundings. For heaven cannot be perfect until we all have reached it. Recognize each child as of God, for of such are the kingdom of heaven. See the divine spark as the light that is hidden within, and realize that it will not fail to flash out when kindled from the love and purity in the heart of the teacher or parent. Look for the spark and wait patiently for the flash, for as you measure out love, so shall it be returned to you. Love can be firm but just, compelling respect and obedience, but eventually all will be love. The necessity for the sterner qualities retiring to the reserve force in the background. Prizing as jewels the innate qualities of love and teachableness in the faces looking up to us. We shall, as teachers, cultivate within ourselves reverence for each small personality as expressing the sacredness and value of a gift from God to teach us and the nation, as well as of the gift of life to the child from God. The child is not a chattel, nor merely one of a mass to the true teacher, but is an individual and heir to the glorious republic, life and immortality. Therefore, teacher and parent will appeal to the child's higher sense and spiritual self with confidence that he will respond to the appeal as one on the same plane and with the same sense of honor and understanding. The beautiful things of life such as poetry, or the necessary things in studies such as mathematics, will never be given the child in punishment, for that is the negative method of teaching, but the giving of these to learn for the love of them, and in the sense of doing a loving act, for the teacher or parent will unfailingly arouse the love of the child for these studies, inculcating a sense of the beautiful and the exact. Love is the throne of the universe and the ethical guide of all its movements. As it sweeps on to a far-off event, our own inner light is lightened from the altar before the throne, and it behooves us to keep it shining and pure, illuminating our faces, if we would find instant response from the newly born souls, which look up to us for guidance in daily tasks. Warnings of the strongest nature have hedged in the parent and teacher regarding our care of these little ones. Commands that we despise not only these in our charge, nor is it the will of the Heavenly Father that one of these perish spiritually. Yet we are commanded not to spare the rod when all else fails, lest the child lose its way, but remember to temper justice with mercy. The sense of justice is strong in a child's inner life and will practically never fail to respond to an appeal. We are exhorted also by Holy Writ that wanton leading astray of one of these little ones should bring upon adults' heads a punishment so severe that it were better a milestone were hung about his neck and he were cast into the sea. For their angels do always behold the face of the Father.
Higher ideals in teachers. A continually increasing demand for teachers of higher ideals is noted by observers of the trend of public thought. The life of a man or woman leads outside his or her own classroom is becoming of more and more importance to the taxpayer. His religion has little to do with the life of a teacher as a rule. The separation of religion and ethics having been made many centuries ago, but the ethical and moral standards of the teaching body is coming rightly in the limelight of public opinion. Teachers who are in the profession for the money there is in it, or because it affords them a refined method of earning a wage, or because they have been forced to earn a livelihood in some way, will soon be relegated to the background, for they invariably lack the love for the child and the patriotism required for the best needs of the nation. Moreover, the life of the teaching force led outside their work is to become of more interest to the taxpayer in future. If a teacher is daily instructing students in a clean and righteous habit, is he living up to the standard of his instruction? Is he lecturing to or punishing boys for the cigarette habit and indulging in a quiet smoke himself when the building is out of sight? Are women teachers preaching simplicity in dress and themselves appearing at school functions in garb suitable for an evening reception? Are they teaching the evils of slang, gossip, and the misuse of the English language and indulging in these misdeeds themselves when off duty? The educational system is sacred to the United States and its strong foundation stone. Therefore, the educational staff is dedicated to a holy work and will more and more be required to live up to the ethics of that work. Nor will the parent fail to regard the school building as sacred to the coming generation in their use of it as a neighborhood center. His conduct when entering the building, the language he uses while near it, his tone in speaking of it before the child makes part of his citizenship. Teacher and parent must work together in upholding this bulwark of the nation, the public school. All schools should be public. No greater menace faces this country than that of a class educated apart from the ideals of the republic. Neighborhood centers. The organization of neighborhood centers, parent-teachers associations, and mothers' clubs should be of inestimable value to the work, as it brings the people together having the same interest, giving back to the educational staff, brings the staff and parent together, and induces cooperation and neighborhood education in cities as well as in the county districts. Under this head might come the Little Mothers, classes held after school where girls are trained by a nurse or physician in the care of younger children. This is especially recommended in crowded districts and cities, when poverty makes little mothers a necessity, and the instruction should include correct bathing, dressing, and general care of infants, diet and the serving of meals, cleanliness, hygiene, study of food values, and combinations for young children. Here also should the warning against giving young children coffee or strong tea be sounded, as well as instruction against the eating of heavy meats, and the knowledge of nerve value to healthy children and its destruction by the cigarette habit be thoroughly inculcated. Classes after school in which courtesy and good breeding is taught and illustrated should be held by either the teachers or some mother, appointed from some of the neighborhood organizations. Here the child should be trained to meet the awkward age, which often leads to much embarrassment and suffering. To pass this child through this period with its attendant evils and with its plastic, formative error, by drill in gentleness of speech and mannerism, courtesy to elders and ladies, is to serve both the child and nation in the most practical way, for it gives the public a graceful and attractive boy or girl whose gentle breeding wins half the battle in finding employment. Here should be discussed the cigarette habit, gum chewing, slang, evil report, slander, vulgar tongue, and debasing thought in firm but gentle leadership, drawing out opinions from the child as far as possible. When a child once expresses himself along right lines, he is apt to struggle to live up to it before his mates. A thorough handling of the cigarette habit and its destruction to the nerves, as well as to self-mastery, and the danger of thereby setting the various diseases upon the system, or opening a way for numerous ailments, should have a prominent place in these classes in courtesy. Emphasize the teaching of the holy temple and its clear windows, the eyes, as the shrine of the day star, from on high, the soul, and the fact that we are always angel guarded and are never alone, under the constant watch of the angel presence. A child who knows of this guide will be twice on guard, where not knowing he will be careless and slip into temptations. Thus the soul is twice guarded in the child's mind, and he assumes a personal responsibility for his own share in the work, for the unseen is very much closer to the child than to the adult, who has allowed the mind to overwhelm the spiritual things of everyday life. The careful teacher will steadily hold the students to the lessons learned in the class in courtesy, in the matter of opening doors, offering seats, handing books or other objects with grace, lifting the hat, allowing the lady to pass, or the acknowledgement of the lifted hat on the part of the girls. Practicing the above as well as in table manners, church and public etiquette should be held in these classes, and will prove a delight to be looked forward to as well as an instruction. A play written and enacted, bringing in these courtesies, is recommended. Eugenical instruction. Much discussion, pro and con, has been indulged in as to the advisability of giving this instruction in public schools. No satisfactory agreement has so far been reached, and there still remains the child whose home environment is such that no instruction can be received, who attends no church where spiritual education might be given, and who becomes a menace to his mates. These should be under the instruction of a mother or father chosen from the Parent-Teachers Association for that purpose, one in whom the association has full confidence. Failing to secure such, the instruction should be by the principal or a teacher according to the sex of the student. The surest way and most effective method of eradicating disease is strong and sane instruction along these lines while the child is young and impressionable. Personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is the keynote to strength and true manhood and womanhood. Coercion, however, along these lines will develop antagonism and a non-interest in right living. Hence, the subject must be presented to each pupil as though he were a rational human being, thus appealing to his pride and subjective self and innate sense of being, varying the language to suit the age of the student. All the years from the cradle to adolescence are of supreme importance in setting the habits of thought and character. During these years, the child must be made to understand that he is here for a purpose, and that life is a glorious opportunity to grow towards God, and that all thinking and acting along right lines will develop a power which is to be used only for good, to be positive for all that is pure and good, and not half-hearted in attitude, will bring greater trust given into his hands. He cannot be trusted with great responsibilities until he has demonstrated that he has been faithful in small things. Each individual is a free agent to build for himself a strong, fine character, but he must realize that no one may build it for him, although they may show him the way. In his own hands, he holds a glorious future to make or to mar, for life here and hereafter. transforming himself from weakness and inefficiency into strength and self-mastery. It is the way of the cross, with many stumblings along the path and many backslidings, with heavy burdens, which are to be made light, but the goal is ever above us. And though the cross be heavy, we shall find that a crown of self-respect, responsibility, and the friendship of our fellow travelers goes with it. The student must be reminded that man is but little lower than the angels, and he is set a lesson here in which to conquer life problems for a reward of angelhood in an existence to come. Choosing the cross, we gain the crown. Cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness, is a familiar saying, and to be clean in body, live in the cleanest way possible and upon the cleanest diet, and to think the cleanest thoughts is a part of the building of an immortal soul. It requires concentration of mind, observation, application, determination, and willpower to maintain cleanliness within and without in the daily habits of our life. But the result is health and success in place of sickness, poverty, and failure, for these are first stepping stones to a successful life. The outside world judges us at a glance by our neatness in dress, precision in small details of bathing, cleanliness of the hands and fingernails, and condemns or approves without waiting to look into the inner life. But we must regard the body as a holy temple in which we are living for a while, never forgetting that life has been given us as a blessing and an opportunity to grow towards God and the heavenly home whence we came. Hence, we will keep this body or temple clear of rubbish and dirt, healthy and pure by frequently bathing outward and by pure thoughts inwardly. For we owe this in account with our souls, the precious trust given to us. Beautifully well kept houses are never surrounded by rubbish, straggling hedges, and tumbled down fences. The condition of the window panes, the front door, and the neatness of the children who issue forth from a house set the seal of neatness or slovenliness upon the mother of the family. So is it set upon the personality of the student in his daily dress and habit of neatness. Neatness is not overdress or display, nor is it rags and carelessly made garments, but simplicity and perfection of the whole. A clean, wholesome, and pleasant habitation is absolutely necessary to the environment of that precious gift of God, our soul. Hence we will beware of our outward appearance, lest it indicate a decrepit inward condition. Simplicity. Plain living and high thinking was the rule of the pilgrims from many lands who formed our educational system, and upon which the safety of this republic rests. Forced to live in an unpretentious manner, there sprang from them some of the greatest statesmen of the world who have helped found this mighty democracy. Lincoln was a rail splitter, and Grant the driver of canal horses. Franklin came a penniless lad, and Washington enjoyed the simple country life of his Mount Vernon farm. Let us jealously guard each rising generation that it may not drift away from simple habits, which pave the only way to true happiness, wealth, and a well-spent life. Late hours, heavy food, show and dress, and entertainment lead but to mental, moral, and physical breakdown. To surround ourselves with useless bric-a-brac, expensive today and valueless tomorrow. To load oneself with flashy jewelry, whether it be costly or cheap. To crowd our homes with expensive furniture of doubtful taste, and to entertain lavishly and showily either within or beyond our means is by no means the ideal set for the citizens of this glorious country which is the climax of the ages. Laughter and play and innocent amusements are part of true development. More joy may be found in amusements which draw out the wit, tact, alertness, courtesy, and originality of the child than the very questionable forms of entertainment to such as the growing child is now frequently subjected. Heaven is all about us if we will but throw off the earthly trammels and look for it. It is in the simple white dress of the girl graduate, made by her own hands, in the neat suit her brother earned in which to stand beside her, in the pride of the father and mother, who realize the earthly lesson learned of self-dependence, and in the hearts of the teachers who see the school doors close in June behind a class well fitted for the work of the world. The sensible and patriotic mother will aid the educational staff of the schools in holding the children to these high ideals of one standard for all, poor and rich alike. That will mean no select parties will be given to which some classmates are not invited and which promote jealousy and ill feeling. It will mean that the wealthy parents will not display in any way upon graduation night with a profusion of flowers or gifts, which may cause heart-burning among the less fortunate. In some schools, a midi blouse and a plain white skirt make up the dress of the class for the girls, and the calling of autos for the students or the use of them in bringing the students is discouraged. Walking is healthy and heart-burnings are unhealthy, but no more so for the good of the nation than the effect upon the child of daily habits of indolence and inaction in regard to outdoor life. Presents and collections for principals and teachers is to be discouraged at commencement time, because the tax upon the less fortunate at that time is in many cases at the highest point, and here again the pride of the family and heartaches of the child offset any good the gift might accomplish. Let simplicity be the keynote of every educational institution, and more especially of those select and private schools to which are sent the children of the rich. Upon the fundamental principles of brotherhood and equality rests the safety of the nation, as well as the work she must complete for the rest of the world. The dignity of labor. Each star in the universe has its appointed place and work. Each tree and flower, each animal and bird, each ant and bee labors in its way and in keeping with its sphere. Then there can be no drones in the human family in God's school of the soul. Brain and hands must be occupied, for the brain worker needs manual labor to balance the strain upon his nervous system. Let none expect to live in idleness upon the work of others, nor think he has the right to eat unless he has earned it in a legitimate way. Labor is a fire of purification through which all must pass, said Carlyle, and in which mental and physical poisons are consumed. Satan is ever busy finding mischief for idle hands, and the sooner all are trained to some profession or trade, and the knowledge of the value of the trade, the sooner will Satan lose his old-time occupation. Let each man and woman go into training for some definite purpose or work that shall be of benefit to the race and earn a livelihood for themselves. The day laborer, if he give honest work, for honest wage is as important to the country as the millionaire who works at his desk early and late, that great industries may flourish, honest labor for the workman or safe investment for the capitalist. The laborer is worthy of his hire, and he has a God-given right to live comfortably. Brain and brawl combined may move mountains, but the two must labor together for the good of both and the well-being of the nations. Something for nothing cannot be the basis of well-being in this or any other country, but the workman must earn his wage and know his trade. Patience and persistence in small tasks bring a reward of greater trust. Work regulates the world, creating order out of chaos. Do not expect happiness except through task well done. Work never hurts us, but the worry of unsettled and fretful mind, combined with hard labor, is the serpent in Eden. We must be proud and glad each night that we sink into a delicious sleep, brought about by a day of faithful and honest labor that has entitled us to an honest wage. Do with thy might what thy hand findeth to do. At Beverly Hall, even during the sessions of the Sacred College, the dignity of labor is recognized. You will find the master of the hall, even through all the responsibilities of maintaining harmony amongst the units, giving his attention to various departments of the place just as if no strangers were present. You'll find him early in the morning on the chicken farm, overseeing and actually working so that every fowl and every chicken may be well cared for. You will find him even before breakfast, looking after the welfare of the beautiful collies in the kennels. But more than this, you will find him giving personal attention to every personal letter that comes in so that every student in the field will have personal attention during the time of the sessions, just as at all other times. Further than this, he believes that no man or woman should be a drone, a parasite on society in general, and, very often, there are no servants at the hall, but he selects such of the delegates as he knows have reached a stage of true development where they can understand that, in order to serve, they must first serve. And these he selects to look after the hall, the dining room, even the kitchen, and, while these give good service, for they do their work in love, nevertheless, they are often, as one can well imagine, some amusing incidents connected with this love service. Labor done in love brings a bigger and quicker reward than the human parasite could obtain by following the highest invocations for an eternity. When men and women, boys and girls, are taught that there may be real pleasure even in hard physical labor, then will one of the problems which have thrown former great civilizations in chaos be solved. Imagination. Imagination is mind at play, builder and destroyer of all form in the realm of mind. We go to sleep reveling in it, and waken to at once take it up, that it may be working an injury we never consider. Hence, unless reason and a determined will control it, it drifts at will among the shoals and rocks of fear, pride, grief, disease, accident, the worst forms of evil and degenerate thought, bringing death to the soul and body. The student must be impressed with the danger of allowing the imagination to drift idly on negative or evil lines, and aroused to the necessity of being master of this most important adjunct of youth. From the earliest days of childhood to the age of 21, this faculty must be guarded with a strong hand, for these are the important formative years. The student must be taught that there is no time in the short years allotted us to let the mind drift at will, but trained to hold it under control every moment in beautiful, pure, and holy images, or those of strength and uplift. Let him understand himself as a complete immortal spirit in dominion of mind and a glorious birthright, bound to control at will his thoughts and image making. The thoughts of youth are long, long thoughts. Their dreams are far-reaching and have a lasting influence upon the whole afterlife. Because the delicate tissues are plastic, beware of the sort of imagery for which the mind is used. For by it a man or woman may be made or ruined. Death or invalidism, poetry and failure may be wrought by this faculty, or glorious achievements, mighty orations, splendid possibilities, or dreams come true. Be masters of imagination, and not mastered by it, thus becoming a blessing to all mankind, inspired and using powerfully for good this gift of God. Each achievement of man was first brought forth in his imagination, before he wrought it in reality. God has given in every soul his own image. Therefore, imagination must be considered a holy thing and a mighty soul-building power. Faith. It has been said that with faith we may remove mountains. To become what we desire to become, we must have faith in ourselves and in our priceless heritage of free will to become a son of God and all it implies. Every great scientific discovery or invention, every building, painting, or piece of sculpture was produced by faith in the ability to accomplish. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. It is by faith we create the visible out of the invisible, and by it we overcome selfishness and subdue all bad passions. By faith we are brought in touch with purity and love, lifting us upon firm ground above the temptations of our appetites and passions. Faith in our at-one-ment with God, in our sonship of the Father, builds the soul into the image of the Divine Father, kindling the fire of His love in our hearts towards our fellow students and associates in everyday life. Faith in ourselves gives us faith too in the homeless, heedless, friendless, and outcast. For by faith in ourselves, we realize that these too are sons of the same Divine Father as we ourselves. It leads us, too, to search for the divine spark in the unfortunate, to see that the light yet burns, and to attempt to fan it to a greater brightness through kindness, sympathy, and faith in the forlorn, thus instilling faith in themselves and an ambition to rise again for another trial of life's opportunities and responsibilities. Application. Be faithful every moment with all the power that is in you to the duty that lies next at hand. Do with thy might that which thy hand findeth to do, is an ancient precept. It is an impossibility to live earnestly, work faithfully, and live continually with one object in view without gathering power for yourself. Each victory gained is that much stored up energy and personal focus conserved for use in the future. Resist every temptation to omit your faithfulness to the duty at hand. Work, study, or play, and undreamed of strength will be yours. Memory. Be masters of memory, using it when you desire and as you think is for your good, and never allowing yourself to sink down under unpleasant thoughts. The art of forgetting is one to cultivate when it aids in removing depression. Change unpleasant thoughts and memories for pleasant ones of other times, thus changing your mental condition from despondency to happiness. Birds singing, happy days in the open, pleasant happenings, substituted for nagging cares, soon bring you into a cheerful frame of mind. Concentrate all your willpower upon memory exercises for building habits of mastery and study, work, and leisure hours. Retain memory's treasures and reject all that harms, depresses, and injures the mind, for eventually they will build the soul and character. All have memories, unpleasant, pleasant, and of indifferent value. Most dangerous, however, are those of impure stories, words, and deeds. The sensitive mind of youth struggles often in vain to be relieved of them, and devils thus retain their steps downward. Face such with determination, and put them behind you by substitution of pure and holy remembrances, and gradually the brain cells will respond and cease to repeat them. Beware of receiving new ones into the brain of this character. Be master of memory, and not allow it to master you. Honor. To thine own self be true. Thou canst not then be false to any man. Honor and self-respect are inseparable and a part of the soul itself, a part of personality. Our word, once given, must be kept, a promise to perform, an act must be made good, and a controlling sense of what is right, just, and true be an integral part of one's dignity. The finest sense of honor is constituted in care in performing acts for the neglect of which we would not be punished, or the neglect of which would arouse little or no criticism. Such care is a most important asset in character building. A character so built attracts high consideration and respect from all beholders because of its chivalry and knighthood, high-mindedness, and nobility. Stealing, lying, deceit have no place in the makeup of the honorable man and woman, boy and girl. Each little lie, each small infringement of the code of truth leaves a gate open by which greater error may enter, and sets a hard look upon the face and a shifting expression in the eyes, the soul's windows, that he who runs may read. Take care that one can steadfastly gaze back into the questioning eyes of parent, teacher, and friend, and never be compelled to drop the eyelids because of some inward unworthy thought or memory. Let us keep ever in remembrance that our mission here on earth is to build for immortality, and that the soul entrusted to our care for building is the most precious possession we have. and honor is the soul itself, its defense and shield. To violate one's word of honor or pledge of integrity is a deep disgrace which will bring us a bitter reaping in years to come, by opening the way to greater violation of all that is sacred and holy in our personal temple. Courtesy. Hand in hand with honor goes courtesy. Good breeding is expressed by the courteous recognition of the rights of others. Whether our courtesy is appreciated by a smile or thanks from those to whom we offer it, or is passed carelessly by without recognition, does not concern us. Our duty is to ourselves, for our own character and its building concerns us far more than lack of appreciation from those with whom we come in contact. Not will we criticize those who thus fell in courtesy to us, remembering God judges them and us. It is ourselves alone we must look out for. It is in the little things of everyday life that count most in character building and good breeding. The hat removed in the elevator or in the presence of ladies and older persons is obligatory upon the builder of a fine presence and personality. To remain seated in the presence of ladies or older persons, to fail to offer seats in streetcars, the churches, or public places, to selfishly fill the air about us with tobacco smoke, offensive to the average woman, to eat peanuts and throw the shells around in public, to chew gum in the face of the inoffensive and innocent fellow passenger on the streetcar or other public vehicle, to talk loudly, use slang, boast, whistle and sing, expectorate or eat lunches in an offensive manner, injures the perpetrator of the unmannerly offense far more than it does the silent endurer of it, for it leaves an indelible mark upon our courteous habit of life hard to eradicate. Here must we be absolutely selfish and look out for the future of our whole life, lest we later present an awkward, ungainly appearance and person to be dreaded by all well-bred society. The girl who fails to thank the gentleman for the seat tendered, door opened, or acknowledges the little courtesies of hat lifting or favors offered, fails in her duty to herself far more than the boy, guilty of discourteousness for woman, is the finer of the human race, and with her the race falls or rises. She has twice the responsibility and dignity of position in the case. Habit. Be master of your habits and not mastered by them. Watch jealously each creeping thought or act, that it be healthy and of good report, lest an evil habit crystallize itself upon you. Character is completed habit, and you will fail or succeed in the same ratio as you master thought habits first and then put into physical habit. Aimless, careless thinking is degenerating to both body and mind, while a lax, irresponsible mind will imagine itself to be the victim of circumstances which it created and for which it must suffer the consequences. Carelessly leave some gate in your mind ajar and your most valued forces will pass out, which you may need at a critical moment. Habits of allowing opportunities to slip away will finally prevent any more coming your way. Force your mind by daily thought to build right habits. Mind is all-powerful, but it is but a machine by which we grow habits. It is but the boy's mind which leads him to take up the detestable weed, tobacco, which wreaks a first terrible vengeance upon him, and then by his persistence conquers his physical resistance and settles itself upon him as a habit which wrecks his nervous system and his self-mastery. The nerves are the electric wiring of the body, subject to every play of thought. Tobacco drugs them into insensibility and later opens the way to every disease, more deadly as a habit than alcohol, because more insidious. It fastens upon the child through her mind. Right habits of thought inculcated in the perilous days of adolescence and before form a wall of resistance when under temptation all through life. Never say you cannot control a thought. Forget an injury. Avoid interruption in necessary duties. That a good thing is an impossibility, or that you cannot accomplish a task set before you, or break off a bad habit you find you are forming. Mind is a machine. given us to build a perfect life and an immortal soul. Let us see to it we are masters of that machine and not allow it to master us. Let us be transformed by renewal of our minds. The mind. Man is possessed of a soul, spirit, body, and a mind which ordinarily rules over him in his personal kingdom. Mind must not be allowed to thus usurp man's throne. For while we are to regard mind as important and its training as necessary, we are by no means to bow down blindly before mentality as a god. Over mental development is a dangerous thing leading to crime, unbalanced judgment, self-conceit, insanity, and an undeveloped soul in the life to come. Ancient philosophers likened mind to water because it was never at rest. Therefore, mind must be subjected to our will and guided and held firm for good, lest it run away with us through our imagination and the senses which are ever at play upon it. Concentration along stated lines of study is the best method of controlling mind and making it subject to the will of the owner. The will. Each student should realize that he is possessed by a divine will and also has a will of his own. His own will must be in harmony with the divine will, guiding him through trust in the overruling divine will. But his own will must dominate his impulses, desires, and imagination in order to keep him in tune with the divine will. A weak will does not exist, but a will may be obstructed and dammed up by fear, desire, grief, and selfishness. Convincing the child of this obstruction allows his will to flow into the will stream of the universal will, and is the sure way to accomplishing all good while keeping the will strong. Aggressive, forceful brute will never wins in the end, but the deep, calm, steady flowing will wins eventually. Apart from God, our wills are powerless for good, but will and interest united to God redeems the world and works miracles of divine power. Let teacher, parent, and student determine to be at first with the divine will, and there will be no such word as failure. Consider each obstacle merely as a test, putting all your mind power behind your will, saying ever I will, and not I hope to. Conscious and the soul. There is a still small voice within each of us which speaks to us when we do wrong. It is the voice of intuition or the voice of the soul, and it is more than that, for it is the voice of God speaking within us to warn us of our divine origin, our subjection to the treacheries of the carnal mind, and our pilgrimage through earth life in quest of the completion of immortality. We cannot hide from the voice of conscience, for the soul is the living, immortal part of us, but we can stifle it, deny it, and refuse to listen to it until it grows weaker and weaker and its light dies out of our eyes. If we persist to the bitter end, the divine spark, which was given us from God, will die out and return to him from whence it came, leaving us little above the animal kingdom. Solar conscious has been called subjective mind, endurance to the strong, objective mind of the brain. To each of us, it is the Christ crucified within ourselves upon the cross of the daily temptations of life. It is the most priceless gift of God, and daily we abuse and subject it to indignity. But if we steadily learn to listen to the little voice, it will grow stronger until it controls our lives, and we become more and more like God. We must think of it as a pure white flame burning upon our inner altar. We may feed it with pure and holy thoughts, and it rewards us with untold happiness. All the powers of the body center at this white shrine within us, which sends out the warning when we do wrong. Will, imagination, anger, fear, hate, love, evil thoughts, unhappy memories, spiritual laziness play upon the mind, which builds or tears down this holy flame, the soul. The soul and conscience are all love, for God is love. Hence the little voice is one of love, God's own daily protection over us, speaking directly down to us from his mighty throne. Conscious is the voice of the angel of the shrine of the soul within us. We will guard that angel that it may never leave us until we follow it to the gates of heaven itself. Judge not, for through the workings of the great law, God takes this task upon himself. We cannot know what individual weakness may cause our brother to stumble and fall, nor is it for us to decide when unfortunate inheritances or physical weaknesses bring suffering upon ourselves through another. What a special form of punishment shall be meted out to the offender. That is God's work, and we wisely assume the attitude of a spectator, knowing the great law of compensation never fails to act. Each must reap his sowings, and although we may help or advise or protest in a kindly way, we must remain silent as to pronouncing judgment and refrain from the carrying out of revenge. If one seemingly more fortunate in worldly position or wealth revels and scorns us, attempting to push us from a path of progress or attainment, forget not the spectator's attitude of calmly looking on, but return good for evil, remembering that we ourselves may have committed the same fault towards another, and this is but our reaping, while as for this offender, the law never fails. Each victory won over self in such a trying time builds strength for us and makes the next trial easier. Revel not, either those who offended you or those who proved false to all that is holy. For tomorrow may see you lying in the same ditch of wrongdoing as the fellow traveler who so offends. In his own good time, God judges, and in his own way he metes out justice with the same measure we have measured it to our fellows. As ye sow, God is a God of love and not of hate, although he has been called a God of hate, because by the breaking of his laws by man, the inevitable punishment descends upon the human race. God cannot be bought, and neither can he be hired to forgive. He punishes no one, but he does not prevent the working out of the laws which we set in motion the moment we commit an evil act towards another or towards ourselves. The great law of, as ye sow, so shall ye reap, acts in several ways. For example, ordinarily, we must pay the penalty for a wrong done another, but there are wrongs we may commit which we find it impossible to do right. To offset these, we may instead perform some act of kindness for another, thus lessening the penalty of our reaping for the evil we were unable to make right. If we give a note for borrowed money, the day will surely come when that money will be required of us. But in life's lessons, we may pay out the note by faithful work, in this way offsetting the debt of wrongdoing when it becomes due. Thus we gradually learn to guard our tongues from evil and mischievous speaking, our minds from evil thoughts, our eyes from evil sights, and our souls from harm. This is the foundation of the technique for self-mastery, patiently to be acquired in daily life. God's lessons are given each hour to learn. Master them patiently and bravely, and as we cheerfully work out each wrong done another or forgive those done us, we grow daily stronger. As we progress, each good act performed for the wrong we have committed is passed to our credit by the recording angel who watches over us. It is worse than useless to waste time in censure and bitterness towards others, but rather let us reflect and determine if we have not earned the reprisal received for some act committed thoughtlessly against a fellow being. The law never teaches an eye for an eye, but rather overcome evil with good. God's little ones. The animals, birds, flowers, and vegetations are God's little ones, who, devoid of power of speech and subject to man, and of another plane of existence, climb the ladder of evolution below us. To man they look up as to an elder brother, and on man they depend for their well-being and very existence. Man has been so untrue to his trust that the birds of the air fly in terror before him, and the innocent brute creature regards him as an enemy. This is because he has needlessly maimed, hurt, and destroyed them. Thou shalt not kill applies to the animal creation as well as to the human race. For man has little need of animal food, nor does he gain by useless experiments upon the helpless bodies of his fellow creatures. For every deed committed against the denizens of the lower kingdom, wantonly, cruelly, and idly, we pay the price in a mark set upon our faces, minds, and soul. Helping others. Because the great law of as ye sow is absolute and just, and because all men reap only that which is due them, should not prevent us from helping others when in need or when requested to help them. Our full sympathy must go out to that fellow traveler upon the path with ourselves, whose ignorant sowing or unfortunate mistakes have brought a bitter reaping. All help given to others is that much credit passed to our account with God, thus paying some of our own debts which otherwise we might not be able to pay, save by supreme suffering and loss. Often it may be that the best help we can extend to our neighbor is to help him to help himself, to think for him, or to see that his self-respect and personal responsibility is not injured by our assistance. A kind word and a sympathetic glance often go much further than actual physical assistance. At no other time will the inner spirit so plead with you if you but listen to it, with opportunities to assist those in your intimate surroundings who are struggling with liabilities of mistakes, sickness, poverty, humiliation, sins, or lack of willpower to help themselves. To listen to the inner voice of conscience, to act upon the good advice it gives, is to become one with God and to know God's law. Every instance in which we consistently do this enables us next time to meet the case with surer judgment, with less self-questioning and embarrassment. Who gives himself with his alms, feeds three, himself, his suffering neighbor, and me. Brotherhood in charity. Adolescence. A new light in the eyes, a fresher bloom to the cheek, unknown delights and dangers, awkwardness and self-consciousness in the boy, with moods and tempers in the girl, dreams and imagination, lack of them in study and work, mark the entrance into the danger zone of sex consciousness. But at no time will instruction concerning the soul and all it stands for be so well received and be so necessary as at this age. God could not send souls into the world without the help of both men and women. Men must become industrious, clean-lived, and pure to become good fathers. Women must be patient, self-controlled, and chaste to become good mothers. And the greatest, most sublime work men and women can engage in, and the work that brings them nearest to God and makes them his co-worker, is that which brings them together in holy love and which rears around them a sacred home, shelter for the little children which they bring up in his name. The love between man and woman is holy, and on no account will we listen to play, story, or speech which drags that holy love in the dust. Neither will we look upon any picture or book which belittles or betrays holy and pure love, for to do so would be a danger to ourselves and a disrespect to those parents to whom we owe obedience, and who have in love built our earthly temples and kept them so faithful in sickness and health, a lack of respect for ourselves. The soul is the shrine of love within the temple of the body. It is of God, and the Christ within ourselves, and can only reach perfection through keeping the body in the highest state of purity and cleanliness through obedience to God's law. Each morning, looking in our mirror, we may tell by the soul light in our eyes whether we are keeping the shrine pure, and each evening we may review the day and note whether the mind has kept guard over its temptations. Woman's whole life is bound up in love. She is its custodian and keeper of its shrine for the whole human race. She is man's equal in every respect, save strength of body, but she is his superior in the spiritual qualities that guard the home, the race, and the soul. She is supreme in her sphere. Girls and boys. In the girl's hands rests the most important part of the nation's future. At the earliest age possible, this responsibility should be impressed upon her. Her dignity, the gentle whiteness of the soul she has been given to guard and keep, must be taught her. In the pairing off and foolish mating ideas, which begin to appear by the 18th year, experience shows the girl is much more to blame than the boy. She early forgets the simple comradeship of school life and becomes the temptress. The parent and teacher will take the matter strongly in hand at the first appearance. Reprove any silly conversation going on among the elders or joking on this most serious subject. Plays and entertainments that lead in this direction must be avoided by the child, and her mind kept fully occupied by study, play of healthy nature, and work. The average young lady has too little to do. She must begin some form of helpful manual labor at the earliest possible age, and all tendency to avoid steady occupation and responsibility for some part of the household machinery be combated steadily by the parent. Neatness, daintiness, thoroughness, and purity, self-respect and self-reliance are fundamentals of girl character. That she is the finer side of the human race must not be forgotten, and that she owes herself dignity and respect in order to expect it at the hands of her boy playmates. Hence she will doubly guard her lips and thoughts that no taint may come upon her girl's purity and self-respect. To lower herself in the eyes of boy companions is to inflict upon them an injury, and upon her sex a disgrace. Woman's importance begins with the earliest years, for no nation ever rose higher than its women. She is the race barometer, and with her purity and cultivation along right lines, nations stand or fall. Boys and girls. Teacher and parent will combat insensible efforts made to pair off the children by foolish friends and classmates, keeping ever the comradeship and brother and sister idea and influence in the foreground. Sweethearts naturally are attracted to each other by the time the students have reached the age adolescence or shortly before. Any undue attention called to mating or undue forcing of this subject upon the attention of the child must be met with strength and determined opposition. For the healthy child mind must be kept clear of this subject until well formed, and the habit of clean thoughts and right action be well sat. Guarding the mind from evil stories and words, the memory from the impression of evils recorded, must be impressed upon the child in these years before adolescence, that a firm foundation may be laid for this trying time of unknown and little understood temptation. The holiness of the body as a temple of the soul. The free will of the owner to make or mar its purity must be strongly set forth by the parent or teacher. Personal responsibility for the white soul entrusted to the child's keeping will be readily understood by the child, and it will see at once the need to preserve this shrine from vulgar words and acts, or evil influences by which it may be surrounded. The boy will see that the delicate girl comrade is to be reverenced by the stronger playmate. She is to be protected, helped over rough places, shielded from evil words and acts by him as a guardian of all that is good and pure. Mentally, she will meet him on his ground, but physically he must realize his strength and never use it against her, but only for her protection. All natural and healthy childish amusements which bring out the originality and self-development should be encouraged, especially before the age of adolescence, in preparation for the new consciousness of sex difference which arise about that time. Speaking and spelling contest, games which give pleasure and teach strength of character, and healthy rivalry should be planned. Keep the mind occupied when not engaged in study. Thus, Satan will find less occupation. Sweethearts, the time of happiness and dreams, jealousy and self-distrust must be met firmly, and the whole attention of the student held as far as possible to his own personal responsibility and development for a life work, quite regardless of the ripples of friendship and their attendant pleasures and pains. Discussion with them in private classes or individually of the basis of their cosmic force and its godlike purity, its dangers, and in their own free will to make or mar their own lives. Plain talk upon the wonderful privilege of a home of their own, barred and banded from the outer world in holy love, must be given. Emphasis being upon the fact where love is not, there can be no lasting foundation. And to marry without love is to drag the holiest gift in mire. Hence, each girl should be taught to train for an independent, self-supporting life, that she may never be tempted to marry for support alone, for convenience or for wealth. The dignity of a woman and her importance to the world, her duties as a mother or assistant to some other mother is vital. That she insist upon her dignity and her self-respect when with boy companions in a sensible manner is the surest way to win esteem from the opposite sex, as well as to teach them the spiritual superiority of woman. Boys will never attempt familiarity with such a girl, or to smoke cigarettes in her presence, be rude or careless in language, invite her to a questionable place or play. If the girl stands steadfast for her own dignity as a habit, this does not mean a stiff and stately demeanor, calculated to freeze all of life and gaiety, but rather a protecting inner shell built about the person, which shall shield through all fun and recreation any approach to the debasement of the love force and holiest shrine within each student. Through these lessons we prepare them for the time of motherhood and fatherhood, its responsibilities and pleasures, and by which they become co-workers with God in the rearing of immortal souls for his kingdom in heaven. For I have not the right to be as wholesome and as pure as she, who through the years so gladly and free moves gently onwards to meet me. True knight of the 20th century, the brotherhood of man. We have been pilgrims of the night, but we may make our own way a path of light. Brothers and sisters, children of the one Father, we climb together the ladder upwards to him who gave us glorious opportunity of life. There is no other way to reach God in heaven, save by individual effort and the building of an immortal soul by daily self-conquest. In God's sight, one child is the same as another, and he loves all alike. If we are on different rounds of the ladder, it is because of our own weakness. There are as many mansions in heaven as there are conditions of men on earth. We are our brother's keeper in every sense of the word, for his well-being is bound with ours. His sorrows prevent our complete happiness. If he is sick, poor, out of work, or suffering from his bad habits, it is our duty to assist him with a remedy as far as in us lies, or as far as his self-respect allow. Each of us is a citizen in a glorious country, destined to lead the world to freedom, truth, and light. But that leadership cannot be attained if a part of the country's populace is poverty-stricken and ignorant, or lacking in self-respect which makes for true manhood. All nations are represented in our public schools. Their representatives are hereby God's decree to learn the most wonderful lessons given any nation. Revel not the stranger, for God has sent him to us, and he is not only our brother, but the stranger within our gates. Therefore he is doubly sacred and in the need of our aid and patience. America stands for the coming in of the Christ age, and by the stripes of our flag shall all the nations be healed, through the teaching of the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. We must learn brotherhood in the strongest sense of the word, sharing with the stranger his triumph over the difficulties with which he is hampered. Love one another as I have loved you. Citizenship. Humanity, with all its fears, with all its hopes of future years, hangs breathless on thy fate. America is a dream of the ages, foretold by all the great prophets, sages, poets, and philosophers as the shallow of the rest to the worn war nations. The Manasseh of Israel who should prepare the way for Ephraim, the perfect one, the golden age. Our pilgrim fathers fled from a despotic government to brave the savage and the untired wilderness in a quest of a land of liberty. And here they established a Plymouth Rock of religious freedom and moral culture. They have been followed by millions of the downtrodden and oppressed from every nation under the sun, seeking also liberty, light, education, and a better life. Ellis Island is the coming Plymouth Rock of America. The whole world now turns to America as the leader in commerce, mental achievement, democracy, and the one nation alone fitted to give the much needed religious leadership. But before she can guide the waiting nations to a just industrial democracy, to respect for science and expert knowledge, to an art that is beautiful without danger of decadence, to a free citizenship that is also Ephesian, to a system of internal dealing that is just and generous, and to a firm understanding of ethics and religion that shall be lasting, we must first demonstrate our self-accomplishment and mastery of these much desired qualities, and that can only be accomplished through a perfect educational system that shall include individual spiritual development, beginning with the home, the parent, the teacher, and above all, the child. Where other nations have attempted to force their culture upon the world by war and conquest, America must first demonstrate that she herself has acquired one worthy of imitation, and before she can convince the world that the unhappy religious question of all ages is capable of a happy solution, she must stand a living example. Each of us bears upon his shoulders this responsibility, and each child is a foundation stone in the temple we rear, and of unexampled importance. If America fails, the world declines into darkness, for she is the light of the world. If we fail in our duty to ourselves in the building of strong personality and Christic character, we fail in our duty to our country, and she suffers accordingly. And we fail again if we neglect the foreign brother and sister and his offsprings within our confines. Each must accept the situation as a holy trust from the God of the nations, and each be ready to establish a strength and clearness of sight within himself that shall enable him to lift the burden and carry forward to completion the principles of justice and equality for all, which the fathers planted at the founding of this republic, and which was emphasized by the mystic seal in its pyramid and copestone, its eagle symbol of freedom, and its constellation of 13 stars, the Statue of Liberty in New York Harbor, and that other figure, standing upon the Capitol at Washington, which, with drawn sword, faces the east, whence anciently came all that wisdom, which shall henceforth be the peculiar property of America. America is divinely appointed of God to teach the world the meaning of the white stone, or the spiritual kingdom within each man and woman, which shall be the healing of the nations, and which makes for true brotherhood under the law of the divine fatherhood, the equality of man and woman, and the recognition of woman as the highest spiritual human representative. God gave us privilege of being born in this glorious land, or having adopted her as our motherland. To be unfaithful to her and the principles upon which she is founded is to be unfaithful to all that is high and holy within ourselves and to God. Let us reverence then as sacred her stripes which shall heal the nations, her stars that shall lead them upward to God, her patriots that have suffered for her principles, and tread in their footsteps by conducting ourselves with dignity, befitting a citizen and voter of the mightiest nation the ages have yet seen. Fathers and mothers that now are, and mothers and fathers yet to be, each bearing his forehead the mark of personal responsibility for this country of light and hope that shall bring the world to a knowledge of God and his laws, and the immortality of the soul, the Christ within, and peace. We are heirs of all the ages, foremost in the ranks of time. Go ye therefore and teach all nations. Matthew 28:19. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. And please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. We are much needing your support. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description below. Thank you so very much.